Okay, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a recap of Bodyguard Season 1, Episode 3. Okay, so of course it's the morning after the attack and the morning after they spent the night together. So they're just having, just some little pillow talk, trying to find out more about each other. And of course, because they have adjoining rooms, he was able to slip back into his room without anybody, what we assume nobody knows, right? And so while he's getting himself together in the other room, Steven stops by to give her an update, and they kind of going over what could have possibly happened and why the response team never showed. And Steven she mentioned whether it was the RIPA 18 bill or something she's trying to get passed, and he's like, it could be more, that could be a part of it, but it's possible that your itinerary was leaked. So there's a leak in her little group there. She still think that it has something to do with and Sampson, the woman who's over the what is it terrorist something terrorist section where they deal with that kind of stuff. She still thinks it has to do with that because their partying in their last meeting wasn't the best. And she mentioned again, what about our agreement? Now, at this point, we still don't know what their agreement was. So it's still up in the air. Like, you're still giving her the side eye. Like, what exactly are you up to? Are, the rumors, or, the people that's in David's ear telling him the truth about how you're a user and you're, how you're this power hungry, step on anyone that gets in my way kind of bitch, or do you really have some legitimate plans that's going to be beneficial to the country? And so it's still kind of up in the air. Like, but she mentioned our arrangement, and he was like, oh, nobody knows about that, everything that's still fine, and he pulls out at this time, David has pulled out this little kit, I guess, that his supervisor and Sampson gave him, because they obviously want him to spy on her to feed them intel. And so he listened up to that point about, our arrangement and, that whole conversation where he think Ann Sampson has to do something, and they said their piece, and Steven left. And so David is there, he's sitting and thinking, trying to put some things together. You could see his mind working. And of course, but eventually he gets himself together and he walks out of the room. As if nothing happened the night before, and he escorts her because he has to be with her wherever she goes. So he escorts her downstairs, and all of a sudden she has to use the bathroom, and they didn't have a lady officer there to go with her, so he ends up having to go in and check the bathroom. And then she's throwing him up against the door, and she's all over him, and I know you never let anything happen to me. And so I'm like, okay, is she using her feminine wild, like she's trying to seduce this man into doing what now? Like, because of everything that people have said about her and how she's being portrayed, up front, it's like, girl, I'm just still like, okay, whatever. And so, David ends up meeting with his superior. I can't think of the woman's name. It's the same woman he met with when Ann was there. And she wanted an update. And he's like, an update? He said, well, just wanted to meet with you in private for your report. And so he's like, well, what report were you talking about? So clearly they have somebody else watching her as well, because they were aware that Steven had been there, how long he had been there, and basically she was trying to find out what he was able to get from whatever conversation they had. But he basically told her that he was in the shower, he was not aware of that meeting. And then she threatened him, like, then she goes, well, how's your family? And he was like, well, as far as I know, they're fine. Why? Is there another threat that you know of? And she was like, well, no, well, for the time being, we're able to keep them in protective custody, but we don't know how long the budget is going to allow us to do that. Basically, like, if you don't get us something on Julia, that basically we're going to kick your family out of protective custody, and whatever happens to them, and you can deal with that, on your own, kind of shit. And I'm like, okay. So he's like, I'm going to try to get some information, get whatever information that I can make out. And she was like, oh, well, that's good, that's great. And so they end up parting ways. And so it's like, you don't know the motives of the people who claim to be on the good side, that they want him to, they're asking him to spy on her for, and you don't really know her motives. And he's kind of stuck in the middle, trying to figure out who's basically, there's no clear cut of who's the good guy, who's the bad guy right now. And so he's kind of being batted back and forth. So it's gonna, I mean, it's an interesting show. So I don't know, but like I said, Julia, I have my eye on you. I don't really know. Okay, so after David left the meeting, he had to go meet with what they call SO15. I don't know if that's like the FBI or the CIA or who, to kind of give a verbal account of his written report. And so he meets with them, and he's basically going over, basically telling them the same thing that he wrote in his report about the shooter. Now, even though he knows the shooter, he doesn't want them to know that he knew the shooter. And apparently the guy had been planning it for some time because they can't find anything on this guy. They have no idea who he is. Obviously the gun was untraceable. So he's right there. At this point, he's just a phantom. They have no idea who he is. And they were asking him about if the guy, basically said anything useful. He said, well, no. And they said, well, they had some CCTV footage, but they could see that there was an exchange between them, but there was no audio. And so he said, yeah, he was just basically telling me that he wasn't going to let me take him alive. And of course, which we saw in the last episode where he shot himself. And he said, they were asking, well, you claimed to claim him to be a stranger, and yet you're saying that that because he saw the other officers downstairs and he knew he wasn't going to be able to get out, that he was going to shoot himself. How did you come to that conclusion? He was like, well, you're right. I was just assuming, but if you want me to amend my report to say that, then I will do that. And so basically they didn't really get much out of him where that's concerned. So they head back to Julia and David. They head back to the safe house. And she could tell that he was just kind of deep in and thought about everything that had happened. So she asked him if everything was cool, and he said, yeah. And then eventually he started talking. And he eventually asked her, like, my son's school. How did you know about my son's school? And she did the, I'm really tired. I had a long day. And she basically opened the door like, you have a good night. You have a good day. And so they parted ways. And of course, this is deepening his suspicion of her. Like, why are you not, you already broke protocol by telling me that it was my kid's school, but when I asked you for more information, why are you mum now? So he's in his room, and she had another visitor, and the person brought her a tablet that contained some file that she wanted to see, and it was time sensitive. I think it was only available for a certain amount of time. He basically explained to her what was what, and they left. And so he knew that somebody was in the room, so the guy left the room, and he came out and basically identified himself and asked the guy who he was, and the guy identified himself as Richard Longcross. And so they parted ways. And so he's back in his room I guess he's sitting next to the door to see if she has any conversations that he can, any information that he can pick up. But she's actually reading through the file. It was some file that some stuff was redacted, but it talked about alcoholism, and they had 50 weeks clean or something, and you can't see who the report is about, but it's just like snippets of the actual report. And then there was like some charge of sexual assault, and then the description of the sexual assault. It was just, again, you're not getting a whole lot. Some of the report is redacted, but she reached through it, and yeah. So now the next day we are Sharma and Raven, who are these SO15 officers who interviewed him about his report. Sharma, I guess, was giving the rest of the team an update, and she came in saying she had some CCTV footage, and they were actually able to capture the shooter as he was walking to the building the night before. So he had been there all night and most of that day up until she took her route to go wherever they were going that day, so when he opened fire on her. So he had prior knowledge of her route. So that's what they were able to obtain from the video. Like, he knew exactly where he was going. He knew exactly what he was going to do. So he had prior information. So they gave them something to go on, and they saw the bag that the shooter had the day before. But even though the gun is still untraceable and this guy's still a phantom, they still have no idea who he is, the actual shooter is. And so they're in the meeting with Julia and Steven and some of the other people, and Anna wasn't there. I didn't see Anna. But Steven was basically saying that as far as the bombs were made by the same person, and it appears that he blamed the office of police department for leaking information. Even though, I mean, he didn't provide any proof. It could be any number of people that's connected to her that would have prior knowledge of her movements. So they're still going with the leaked itinerary. Obviously, somebody told this man where she was going to be, or it's the route that she was going to take to get there. And so, of course, one of the guys was like, do you have any proof of this? Obviously, he didn't. And Julia kind of stepped in to before the situation escalated. Basically, we're not accusing anybody. Basically, we're just trying to figure out what happened. Okay, and so before everybody left the room, Steven asked to speak with Julia privately. And so they go into her office, and he's basically asked her if she had an opportunity to look over the information. And she said she did. And they said, well, and she knows the perfect opportunity to bring this up. So they're obviously trying to get somebody out of the way. Like I said, the report was redacted. We don't know who. So I'm assuming that's going to come up really soon. Of who they got this information on. So I'm just going to keep watching. Hey, so it's the end of the end. Okay. So it's the end of the day, and they're on the elevator leaving the office, and she apologized for the night before, like, oh, I was just tired, and I'm sorry, I have a lot of work to do tonight, but afterwards I'll give you a knock. And he was like, what, am I room service? Like, the fuck? Like, she was like, that was kind of funny though. She was like, so they didn't really say too much after that. And so now they're back in the room, and she knocks on the door, opens the door, and she looks at him, and she was like, I know that you understand that I didn't mean it that way. She was like, oh, don't tell me you're one of those guys who can't deal with a woman in power. And so she left it open and sashayed on across the room and did her whole seductive thing. And of course, he ended up in the bed. And so she's knocked out. He got up, and he kind of went through her bag and found some paper. Based on his facial expression, it was something big. And so he had something to report to his superiors, okay? And so they're still trying to figure out, okay, so what is her game? What's she all about? What's going on? And he's basically like, he doesn't know. And basically he'll try to find out what he can. I mean, that's as good as he could, say. So the meeting, so she ends up going to a meeting. I don't know if that was Senate, I don't know, Parliament, whatever that was, some kind of meeting, where she was, someone was arguing against RIPA 18. And it seems like RIPA 18 is something like the Patriot Act, I think, which gives the government more power to kind of peer into the lives of citizens in the vein of national security. That's basically what it, and so I'm thinking that's kind of what RIPA 18 is, and that's why people are so up in arms, like, this is going to be an invasion of privacy, it's going to infringe on our rights as citizens, our privacy, and da. So that's, I think, what RIPA 8 is all about. And so someone stood up to argue against it. She stood up to kind of clarify, like, what it's supposed to be about. And just people are just not happy with this bill, the RIPA 18 bill. Like, no, we don't want no parts of it, no parts. And so Mike ends up meeting with someone, I forget who, I can't even remember that guy's name. It was the same guy who, when she went to another meeting in the first episode, he said, tell your monkey to back off, and David was like, I'm mixed race. And then the guy got kind of sat there with a stuck face, like, oh shit, am I gonna be labeled a racist or something? So it kind of backed him off. So I can't remember the guy, I can't remember his name, but he met with him, I guess, to kind of give him an update. Like, she's doing things off the books, like she's going off script, whatever they agreed on or what they feel like she's supposed to be doing, she's going off that. And so he went to give the old boy an update on that. He's in the office, and he finds out that one of the other officers tells him that they're getting an update on who the shooter was. And so, I mean, I think he knows that it's only a matter of time before they find out who he is and how he's connected to, how the shooter is connected to him. So I'm assuming that's going to come up really soon. So around this time, Julie calls David saying that she has to take a trip and she wants him to be there, and she'll give him the details when they're en route, just because she don't know where the leak is coming from. And she doesn't want him to report it to anyone. So it's going to be no other security accompanying them. And she just wants it to be him. And so, of course, he was like, I can't really do that. And he's like, you know what? We don't know where the leak is coming from. I'm going to take responsibility for it. If the need arises, I'll take responsibility for it. And so they end up going on their trip. It's 3 hours a night. And when they get there, he finds out that she's meeting privately with the prime minister. What was discussed at this point is anybody's guess. And so Mike ends up meeting with another guy, meeting with that same guy later. And he walks into the room, and they're actually watching her, the debate that she had with the other person about number 18. And he tells her that, I already know that she went and met with the prime minister. And the guy tells Mike, okay, we got to figure out how we're going to fix this. And so eventually a guy ends up going into Steven's office, because even Steven didn't know. And he's like, what the hell is she doing? What is going on? So now Steven is like, what? He doesn't know what's going on with that either. So when she said that she was going off to do this, she didn't want anybody to know she was dead ass serious. Like, people, even though Steven, because we still don't know whatever arrangement they have with him now, I think he's probably feeling like that's in jeopardy. Like, what is she going behind my back to make some other kind of deal with whoever, whatever. Okay. And so they end up, obviously, they head back to the room. He ends up blowing her back out. It's the middle of the night. And she gets up, he's not there. So I'm thinking, oh God, she gonna catch him snooping through his stuff? No, he'd gone back to his room, and he was fast asleep. And she tries to climb into bed with him, and he flips out. I don't know if it's just because she took him by surprise or whatever. He ends up jumping on her ass and choking the fuck out of her, choking her down to the ground. Okay. And so she ends up, he's like really, and so he ends up snapping out of whatever psychosis it was, and he jumps back, and she crawls back into her room and closed the door, the adjoining door. And she was like, I don't know, whatever kind of training you received, it's an old drive, you need to get help. And he was like, I'm really sorry, if you want me to be replaced, we can do that. And she was like, no, I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but you got to do something about this. So he's sitting there just in shock and scared. Like, he could have really hurt her. And of course, she's on the other side of the door, terrified, because she had just been assaulted. So it was a tense moment. It was a tense moment. So it's like, oh shoot, damn, David. Like, you can always tell that there's always something just under the surface with him. Like, he's really dealing with things. He'll have bouts where he starts to hyperventilate. Like, you could tell when he's having a moment. And I guess that situation where she just kind of snuck up on him, and it triggered his fight or flight response. His flight or fight. And this thing that we have, and it probably took him back to when he was in Afghanistan or something, and that was just a bit much for him. So yeah, that was, like I said, tense scene, a very tense scene. Okay, so we are approaching this speech he's supposed to give. So all throughout the episode, they kept mentioning St. Matthew's College. So it's the day of the speech, and of course, everybody's on pins and needles, and especially David and Julia after the incident that happened the night before. So they're en route. It was a quiet ride. And until they got up there, it was to the point where it was just so silent, like even the sirens in the background were kind of muffled. And so it wasn't until they got up closer to the college and all the protesters that they kind of snapped out of it and kind of was more aware of what was going on around them. So they go in, and no, actually, backtrack a little bit. As she was leaving to get in the car to go there, Rob is the person who was supposed to handle her speech and make sure everything was all up to date. And so he was like, yeah, it's going to be done. I have something else to do, but I'm going to make sure that it gets done. So she goes on, and so now they're en route. Now, after they leave, Rob hands the briefcase over to another guy who I can't think of his name, and basically, like, everything has been checked. I can't make the speech, but this is the all information. So he hands him the briefcase, and they move on. So they get to the college. Security goes in first. And then eventually he felt it was okay to get her out of the car. And then, of course, they're throwing eggs at her. So he gets her into the building. And so there's a line of, I guess, the faculty at the college. They, stood there to welcome her. And he shook their hands. He said, I think we need to go ahead and go on. And so then she looked over and saw her aide, which is the guy that Rob handed the briefcase to. And she was like, well, where's the speech? And you're supposed to do this, this, and this. And he said, wait a minute. Rob told me that was already done. She was like, well, he told me something different. So just make sure you get it done. So now he's realizing that he's just been fucked. He's just been set up, right? So he receives a call. Don't know what the call was about. But you can tell by his face that he feels like, okay, what the hell did I just get pulled into? So at this point, Julia is in the room. She's in the room waiting for her speech to start. David is getting the last minute updates. They've swept the place a couple of times and they didn't find anything, so they gave the all clear for her to go ahead with the speech. Okay. He goes in to get her to see if she's, everything is, all good, and she feels compelled to tell him how she found out about his son's school. And so she's basically like, it was a possible target. I didn't say anything because it wasn't specific. It wasn't like it was known that you were specifically being targeted, I guess. And so my call was basically all the schools that were potential targets. I put people in place, which actually prevented any of the casualties and any of the children being harmed. And so he basically was like, oh, okay. So he finally told her, and she was like, things are gonna have to change between us. I want you near me next. I want you standing by my side because not out of obligation, but because because you want to be there. And so they parted ways. He escorted her out to the auditorium where obviously the reporters and everybody's out. So he's there, trying to scope out the scene and keeping an eye, seeing where everybody's located, the cameras and all the people. And she comes out to give her speech, and for all intents and purposes is going pretty good. So in the middle of the speech, somehow a couple of protesters got in there and caused a little disturbance, but the police officer was able to get them and escort them out. She continued on. And David, he was standing there and he saw someone walk past the door, and he was like, what's going on over there? So he walks out, and there are other officers in the room. So he basically told one of the guys to stay, keep an eye on her. And so he went out to see what was going on. It was the guy that Rob had given the briefcase to. And he said, what the fuck? What's going on? And the guy was like, there's something wrong with the speech. There's something going on. You need to let her know what's up. And so he asked him about the briefcase. He said, open the briefcase. He was like, what? It's just paperwork. He said, I want open the briefcase. He opened the briefcase. And I guess that's all it was. And so David went back in, and she's still giving the speech. And he saw one of his colleagues, another, I guess, bodyguard officer, and she started running. So we don't know what kind of intel she got. So he saw her running. So he started running up to the stage to get her off. And then there's this huge explosion in this small, it wasn't a huge room, but it was, I don't know. Can you say it was 100 people? Maybe if you include media, but it was really bad. So it blew him back. She's knocked out. She's out. So at this point, it's unclear whether or not she died. Obviously, we know she couldn't die, obviously, because that's the show. But right now, it's unclear to their public, that whether or not she died. Obviously, there were a lot of casualties because there were people who were sitting very close to the stage who would have caught the worst of it. And so now he's at the hospital, or I don't know if he's at the hospital. He's sitting there. He's already been bandaged up. And he gets a call from Vic, his ex, and she's trying to want to make sure he's okay. He's like, he's good, it's good. And you see this asshole Rob show up, and he's trying to act like he don't know what the hell is going on, and the people that are there, he's asking them like, who are you? What's your connection here? Trying to get hold on who all's there. And then a guy walks up, to David. And he said, what the hell? What the fuck? What happened? He's like, what do you mean? He said, basically it was your job to protect her. He was like, wait a minute. There was another set of officers that swept the place twice and gave the all clear. And he said, but it wasn't, was it? But that wasn't his job. That was the other team's job to make sure that the place was clear. So now I can see them trying to set the shit up to make it look like he had something to do with it. So that was kind of weird. Okay, so he walks off, and he walks off. And next you see Sharma, I think it's one of the SO-15 officers or whatever. He's going in to give Anna an update. The head of the counterterrorism agency group, I guess. And he's basically like, it's up in the air, the bomb, And then he starts talking about the information they found out on the shooter. And she has come to the conclusion that maybe he has an accomplice. So you can see them, they are trying to set this shit up to make it look like David has something to do with this. So this is about to be, it's already a mess, but it's about to be a whole lot of bullshit for David. You can see that coming down the pipe. So yeah, pretty good show. What I can say about the show is that I like kind of shows that are the episodes are kind of slow, but they build up. I know that may not be for everybody, but I can say that is one of the things you find out about, you think about this show. It's like, it's a lot of, there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of people, and it does kind of move slow up into the build up as it gets towards the end, obviously to keep you coming back so you can see, okay, now what's going to happen in the next episode. So that's something to think about when you watch the show. But I'm actually enjoying the show. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. There's only 3 more episodes, but pretty good show. So yeah, so I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode.